Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter the most from across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I am Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. The United States braces for a fast-approaching government shutdown as Republicans and Democrats appear unlikely to reach an agreement on federal funding that would extend past the Tuesday deadline. Russia's President Vladimir Putin hails Russian forces for prevailing in what he says is a righteous battle in Ukraine. Putin's address marks the 3-year annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions. At least 10 people have reportedly died after a powerful blast rocks Pakistan's Quetta. Reports suggest the blast, followed by heavy gunfire, targeted a vehicle carrying security forces. Heavy rains brought by devastating Typhoon Bualoi inundated schools and homes in Hanoi. Flights and train services in the Vietnamese capital are also disrupted. And Madagascar's Gen Z escalates protests against misgovernance. Anger simmers across the island nation, despite the president sacking his government in a bid to quell days of unrest that has left at least 22 people dead. Hello and welcome. We begin with focus on the Indian subcontinent. Massive protests have erupted in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir against the Shehbaz Sharif government, with thousands hitting the streets. At least 2 people have been reported dead and at least 22 have been injured as clashes erupted in POK's Muzaffarabad. Videos of violence shared on social media showed chaos on the streets, with police vehicles running into a mob that purportedly attacked them. Reports also say that the police opened fire at protesters. The unrest has been one of the biggest that POK has seen in recent years. Phone and internet services have been partially shut in the region. These protests are being led by the Awami Action Committee, or the AAC, a civil society alliance. The AAC has called for a shutter-down and wheel jam strike, demanding long-denied political and economic rights for the people of the region. The AAC claims that people residing in POK have been detained fundamental rights by successive Pakistani governments in over 70 years. AAC leaders say the lockdown and protest were a direct response to years of government neglect and corruption, as well as the region's resources being wasted on political patronage and bribery.
Our campaign is for fundamental rights denied to our people for over 70 years. Either deliver on rights or face the wrath of the people.
Well, the protests in Muzaffarabad saw widespread support among lawyers and other civil society organisations who backed the shutdown. They also spread to other districts in POK, including Mirpur, Kotli, Neelam and Poonch. The unrest came in the wake of a recent collapse of talks between the AAC, the Pakistani government and the POK administration. The talks were called off after the AAC refused to compromise on abolishing elite privileges and refugee seats. Locals say Islamabad treats POK as a colony rather than as a representative region. The protests have a long list of demands, 38 to be exact. It includes subsidised flour, fairer power tariffs and renegotiation of hydropower plants. Their key demand, however, is the abolition of the 12 seats in the POK Assembly that are reserved for Kashmiri refugees living in Pakistan, which locals say undermines local representation and allows Islamabad undue control over POK's politics. The protesters say the shutdown was only Plan A and that more severe steps will follow if their demands are ignored. In response to the agitation, the Shehbaz Sharif government deployed armed convoys in the region, with thousands of troops brought it in from the Punjab province. Reports say an additional 1,000 police personnel were also sent from Islamabad. The deaths have further enraged the local communities, who were already on edge over several issues, including an increase in terror attacks in recent years. Increased terrorist activity also follows banned groups like the Jaish-e-Mohammed moving into the area to establish new bases after India's Operation Sindoor. Monday's protests in POK were not the first in the region. Pakistan-occupied Kashmir has long been a hotbed of unrest, with locals alleging years of neglect and systematic corruption. In May last year, the region witnessed several protests and shutdowns over the same demands. Back in 2022, there were massive demonstrations in the region against the Pakistan government's plan to fix the constitutional status of the occupied territory. India has maintained that these agitations in the POK are a natural consequence of Islamabad's continued policy of systematic plundering of resources from the region that remains under Pakistan's forcible and illegal occupation. Reports say the latest protests have put Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and his government in a tough spot. The Pakistan government fears these protests could escalate into wider demands for freedom. Is this the beginning of a storm that Pakistan fears the most? Next, we move to a big development coming out of Canada. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government has declared the Bishnoi gang a terrorist entity. Canada's Public Safety Minister announced the designation, saying the group meets the definition of a terrorist organisation under Canada's Criminal Code. Canada describes the Bishnoi gang, run by Lawrence Bishnoi, a 32-year-old gangster from India who has been behind bars for a decade, as a transnational criminal organisation that primarily operates out of India. Authorities say the group is notorious for murders, shootings, arson, and for spreading fear through extortion and intimidation of celebrities and wealthy businessmen. The listing, they said, will give police and immigration officials more leverage, including using it to determine who is admissible into Canada. The designation also allows the government to freeze or seize any assets owned or controlled by the Bishnoi gang within Canada. It further empowers law enforcement to crack down on financing, travel and recruitment activities linked to the group. Under the Criminal Code listing, it is now an offence for anyone in Canada or Canadians abroad to deal with property belonging to the gang. Ottawa says it is also illegal to provide property directly or indirectly, knowing it may be used to benefit the group.
Every person in Canada has the right to feel safe in their home and community, and as a government, it is our fundamental responsibility to protect them. Specific communities have been targeted for terror, violence, and intimidation by the Bishnoi gang. Listing this group of criminal terrorists gives us more powerful and effective tools to confront and put a stop to their crimes.
Now, this move follows the 2023 killing of Hardeep Singh Najjar, a Khalistani terrorist who was gunned down outside of Vancouver. His death triggered a sharp diplomatic breakdown between India and Canada under former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, with both countries expelling diplomats. But new Prime Minister Mark Carney, who took office in March, made moves to repair relations with New Delhi. Carney met Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the G7 summit in June, underlining the need to strengthen commercial links between Ottawa and New Delhi. Earlier this month, Canada formally acknowledged that Khalistani extremist groups operate with financial backing inside the country. Two such pro-Khalistan groups were also classified as terrorist organisations under Canadian law. The two sides have announced the appointment of new envoys to each other's capitals, a move discussed most recently by the External Affairs Ministers of India and Canada at the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. But challenges do remain. Despite Ottawa's crackdown, pro-Khalistan groups continue to issue threats against Indian diplomats. In fact, earlier today, the group SFJ announced a $10,000 bounty against India's new High Commissioner to Canada, raising questions and concerns over whether such elements still enjoy a free hand, even under Prime Minister Carney. Moving on, and in Indonesia, a 4-storey school building has collapsed during prayers in Sidoarjo, east of Java. Authorities confirmed 3 students were killed, dozens were injured, and several others are feared to be trapped under the rubble. The collapse occurred on Monday afternoon at the Al-Kazini Islamic boarding school in Sidoarjo. Dozens of people were praying on the ground floor when the building came crashing down. According to the Disaster Mitigation Agency, construction work was underway on the 4th floor. Officials said the structure, an old prayer hall originally built with 2 stories, had been renovated with 2 additional floors for educational purposes, but without a permit. Preliminary assessments pointed to foundation failure during concreting work. An investigation has been launched.
The old building's foundation was apparently unable to support the extra load during the pouring process.
Rescue teams, police and soldiers pulled survivors from the debris and rushed them to hospitals. Many suffered head injuries and broken bones. Some were in a critical condition.
The number of students that were on the site were 140, and we've evacuated 102, so there are still 38 stuck under the rubble of the collapsed building. Of course, at the moment we are still considering the missing as alive, so we're focusing our search and evacuation efforts on creating access to the first level of the building to reach the victims.
Authorities said 3 students, including a 13-year-old boy, were killed. Figures for the injured and those trapped varied during the rescue operation. Rescue agencies report that around 102 people have been evacuated and said 38 were feared buried under the rubble. As of Tuesday morning, a notice board at the command post listed 65 students as missing. Most of those affected were boys between the ages of 12 and 17, according to officials.
Today, our target is rescuing one victim who's able to communicate verbally with us. However, to reach this target, we need to prioritize safety. Our challenge with collapsed buildings are the instability of the building materials, which could collapse again on survivors or even rescue teams. Recently, we've been able to access through a larger hole and we're able to reach a survivor, but we still can't get them out. So we'll continue our rescue efforts throughout the day.
This tragic incident was the second serious building collapse in Indonesia this month. Earlier in September, a community hall hosting a Quran recital collapsed in Bogor district, West Java, killing several people and injuring dozens more, that according to local officials. Search teams with breathing apparatus, extraction equipment and medical evacuation support worked through the night in Sidoarjo. Rescue teams say they were delivering oxygen and water to those still trapped while efforts to extract survivors continued. He added that bodies had been seen under the rubble, but the priority remained to save lives.
The evacuation process is focusing on those who are still alive. We have to be extra careful because there is a possibility that the collapsed building could collapse again. I hear a lot of crying and shouting voices. It means they are still alive.
Residents, teachers and school administrators helped the injured at the site. Survivors said female students who were praying in another part of the building managed to escape. As parents wait and pray at hospitals and at the collapse site, officials warn the death toll could rise further. We will continue to track all updates and bring you the latest developments on this tragedy. And for our final story, we focus on a major development in the UK, where Prime Minister Keir Starmer's Labour government has unveiled a revamp of the country's immigration rules. Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced a series of new conditions that foreign nationals must meet to qualify for permanent settlement in the United Kingdom. Under the proposed rules, migrants will need to prove they are net contributors to the society. They must be in work, pay national insurance and not have claimed benefits of government subsidies. Those with a criminal record or who cannot speak English to a high standard may find their path to permanent settlement blocked. The government also wants foreign nationals to give back to their community, for example, by volunteering locally. The ministry's statement outlines the new contribution-based model as a way to reduce net migration, boost integration and ease pressure on public services. To qualify for permanent residency, applicants will need to have been a lawful resident in the UK for at least 10 years, which is double of that in the current period. Those who meet certain earnings or contribution criteria may qualify earlier, while non-compliance could delay or reject their applications entirely. The UK Home Secretary warned that time spent in the UK alone is not enough to earn permanent residency, and applicants must show they worked, paid taxes, learnt English and helped their community.
The time in which someone must have lived in this country to earn indefinite leave to remain from 5 years to 10. And we will be consulting on this change soon, and as part of that consultation, I will be proposing a series of new tests, such as being in work, making national insurance contributions, not taking a penny in benefits, learning English to a high standard, having no criminal record. And finally, that you have truly given back to your community, such as by volunteering your time to a local cause. Without meeting these conditions, I do not believe your ability to stay in this country should be automatic.
Now, the Home Secretary has said the policy would be consulted on later this year, allowing public input before final implementation. The move builds on the Labour Party's previous plan to extend the default period for settlement from 5 to 10 years. The government has clarified that the new rules will not apply retrospectively to migrants already in the UK, but may affect those who arrived after 2021 under post-Brexit immigration routes. Critics have raised questions over how refugees or those struggling to find work will qualify, pointing to potential barriers for those in care work or temporary employment. Many warn the volunteering requirement could create a flood of applications to formalise community contribution, from school governing roles to local clean-up initiatives. So the UK under Starmer's Labour Party is taking a tough stance on permanent residency, tying it to contribution, language and community service. That is all that we have time for on the show today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT, only on Firstpost.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost Live, where we bring you the day's top 4 stories from across the world. I am Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the headlines. Russia's President Vladimir Putin hails the Russian